everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and thanks for tuning in for Rose Etude number 3 on Andante Sostenuto. My name is Cally, and I'm going to take you through a brief tutorial on, well, what I like to do when I prepare this piece. So, like I've said before, you want to make sure that you first think about the character that you want to portray with this piece. And so if you look at the clues that are written in your music already, that will kind of help guide you to the kind of character that you'll want to portray in this. So at the very beginning, we have Andante Sostenuto. It's the name of the piece. Andante is a moderately slow tempo, but still moving, and sostenuto means sustained. So everything about this is just very long and legato. So I would take that to mean on the slower end of Andante. So I personally like to take a lot of these slow etudes a bit on the slower side because I think it really helps kind of draw out more of the expressive qualities. However, you can kind of decide for yourself what sort of character you want to portray. So the main thing though is that you just want it to kind of fall under the category of a moderately slow tempo and very sustained and drawn out. So if you look at some of the other clues written in the music, this is one that actually has some dynamics written in, I think. So, if you have additions by, certain clarinet players out there, they may have some things written in their parts differently than I do, and that's totally cool. You can do what you like. But I think in the original print version, there aren't a whole lot of things written in the music itself. So it kind of gives the player a little bit of freedom to decide what to do. So I'm taking you through to just kind of show you what I do in this and kind of what I like to envision. So the kind of mood here, you're in this throat tone range, so I try to go for kind of a more lonely feel, maybe it's the middle of winter and you're really wishing for those summer days and you're feeling kind of stuck in your house because, nobody wants to go outside and play and, I don't know, whatever. But anyway, so to me it just feels like a rather lonely landscape of winter. So kind of going through, it's a lot of very gentle, soft playing. And we'll talk about the big number 2 part of this, which is technique, in just a moment. But you get a little bit of the louder dynamics about a third of the way through, mezzo forte to forte, but then it quickly goes back down to piano as if to remind you that, nope, that little dream about summer, that's not real. You're gonna have to wait. So it comes back, and this lonely, sad kind of theme, and I don't really like using happy or sad, but I guess in this case it kind of slipped out, so there we go, sad. Anyway, so we're kind of going through, and then all of a sudden I feel like about 2/3 of the way through there's a nice big fat forte, and to me all of that is just saying anger, frustration. So I just let it rip. I just go crazy on that forte. I come back down a little bit after the first measure of the forte just to kind of okay, well, maybe that wasn't for real. And then you've got a crescendo and it goes up and you're right back at forte again. And you're so mad because the next measure you've got accents under the slur and you're doing breath accents and it just and you have nowhere to go, and it just kind of fizzles back into this nice, sad, lonely little piano theme, and it kind of dances along. And then the last line of this is your one last emotional of forte, and then it kind of gently, slowly, gradually goes back down and fades off into nothing at the very end. So from a very technical standpoint, you'll want to make sure that your A's, your throat tone A's, are not super sharp. I try to cover the A whenever possible to keep it from going super sharp, especially in relation to the E. You don't want the first 2 notes to be too far apart in pitch. And now that little trill from G sharp to A is like Rose being like, hey, clarinet players need to practice that transition, so let me throw it in there. And it's like super annoying, but like once you get the hang of it, it's literally just like a knuckle trill. One knuckle on the G sharp key, one knuckle on the A key, and you just kind of go crazy on that. And then you got your grace note, and you kind of have to like rock back and forth. So, you know, if you're really into vade-mecum type stuff, you can kind of practice those intervals that you have in the Jean, or you could just practice this one little measure like 500 times, and, you know, get used to that motion here. Anyway, so we kind of go through. Now, it's advisable to subdivide eighth notes in your head. Like that. So then if you want to push or pull the tempo, your internal subdivision can speed up or slow down, and you don't actually lose any beats, because if you do rubato, if you take time somewhere, you got to give it back somewhere else. So you kind of have to, you know, feel it. And I think the key to that is just making sure you're subdividing in eighth notes. Now, when you have that triplet in the second line, I have the tendency to slow down when I have triplets, so I really try to keep the eighth note subdivision going, and I try not to rush too much coming out of it. So again, that eighth note subdivision really helps me out a lot. So if you, at the end of the second line here, you've got these double dotted eighth and 32nd note rhythms. You know, if you're subdividing in eighth notes, 32nd notes are easy. This is your eighth note, 1 and 2 and 1 and 32nd notes, you've got 1 and a, any and a, 1 and a, any and a, any and a, any and a, that's really hard to sing. Anyway, so if you're thinking eighth notes and then you just kind of have that little track of 32nd notes going in your mind, you can kind of feel how it's supposed to sway in the music and then kind of get it right in the pocket. Okay, so now we go around. The third line, I'm like a big person on fingering, so, you know, don't be silly. Use your fork fingering for F sharp. I just hate people who like think it's like cool to like flip back and forth between F and F sharp. If you saw my video on how to annoy your clarinet teacher, you will see that this is like one of my biggest pet peeves right here. So use this fingering right here for F to F sharp. It'll make it sound super smooth and very, very pretty, and it'll make the legato, the sostenuto in this piece, sound so much more musical. Okay, so let's move forward. We've got that trill. That's nothing, that's fine. Okay, so in the middle of the fourth line, you've got all these 16th notes leading to 32nd notes. So guess what? The theme of the day is it's subdividing. So bum 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 ba da la da la da la da lam ba da 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 bum ba da 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 dum. If you're subdividing eighth notes, then you can do that ritardando and not drop any beats or rhythm or anything like that. You could be right in time. And then you cut off that trill, and that trill is just a pretty basic trill. And when you do these grace notes, pretty much anytime you have them, but in a place like this, the grace notes should lead you to the next note. So I hear a lot of people that'll play these grace notes, and like, that's not what they're for. Grace notes are supposed to lead you to the next thing, so make it sound like it's leading you. Cool, so now we're back to this lonely theme. We're coming back. So this subdividing thing is going to come in handy when you've got those 32nd notes again. So if you're thinking in eighth notes and you look at the main beat there, it's actually the little theme from the beginning with some little ornamentation going on. So I like to play the beats on the downbeats a little louder, with a decay. So I think it's printed in the music to decay on those downbeats. But then I use the 30-second notes as a lead-in to the next downbeat. So this is called note grouping. So if you imagine that they take you to the next beat, then you'll have that forward motion and that kind of like swing to it. Kind of like that. So it'll keep you moving forward and not sound dum ba da ba dum ba da ba dum ba da ba dum. And obviously that's not in time either. So again, think eighth note subdivisions, which brings me to the next couple of treble spots. You've got these triplets and grace notes right before it. So don't get tripped up by the grace notes in the 16th note triplets. It should sound like you're just like messing up a little bit before the beat, and the grace note should lead you to the beat. One little trick, if you think you're coming in late off of that 30-second note beat right there, I think I breathe there, and I kind of wish I didn't, but anyway, the tendency is to be late. So if you think you're late, don't breathe there and instead wait until the next rest. However, I think I need a breath, so I think what I do is I cut off the C a little bit sooner, so that I try to not be late on those 30-second notes. And I try to make those 30-second notes just sound like little flourishy flowers kind of floating along up and down. So then, we get to this piano and it's beautiful and the forte, just like go for it. Nobody ever in the history of anything ever said, man, was that a timid forte? And that was awesome. No, nobody ever said that, they enjoyed that wimpy forte played by, Orchestra XYZ. No, people remember power and force and passion. So make this forte really count. And you basically have a little over a line of just this agonizing sort of sound. And yes, you got to do dynamic shaping to give it some phrase and to give it some life, but it all has to still have this character of forte in the piece. So make sure you're trying to really encapsulate that. And then these little piano things kind of going up and down. There's nothing really crazy about that. Technically speaking, I try to make them sound a little more musical. And then you've got this trill from A to B natural. So it's a really sharp trill fingering, but it works. So you play the A like this, and you play the B with the top jelly bean side key right here. So it's kind of sharp and annoying, and especially since it's followed by a B, it can make the following B sound a little flat. So, if you can figure out a better way to do that, just let me know, but that's how I do it. And that's how I was taught. So, yeah. And then, by the time you get to the end, you're back at piano, and just make sure it's just pure. And I think the very end of this just sounds like complete defeat. Fine, you win. I will wait 6 more weeks for summer. So I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in to my video. I hope you learned a couple things, and least of all, I hope it's inspired you to get out there and practice and really make some amazing music. And don't forget to subscribe. It really, really helps me out a lot knowing that people like the work that I'm putting out there. So thank you all so much for watching, and as always, happy practicing.